A very good morning, everybody. Welcome to the first debate or discussion panel element of the Landlord Investment Show 2023. There's a lot to get through in this section. We've titled this, as you can see from the screens there, what is in store for 2024. There's arguably never been a time when there's a greater focus on this whole area for multiple reasons, from government legislation to interest rates and goodness knows what else in between. So the crucial nature, the imperative nature of this area doesn't really need to be explained too much to an audience here, but we do have an expert panel to help us through. So the way this is going to work, we'll talk to our panelists. I'll introduce everybody to you in a couple of moments. We'll get an overview on what they think about the year ahead. We're also going to take questions from the audience as well. So we'll make it a very inclusive piece where, you know, we join in, we debate, we chat, we disagree, we agree, and we take it from there. So in that respect, everybody is welcome to get a point in or a question or a comment. We have a roving microphone to help us with that. Let's introduce the panel that we have for this session. Marie Parris is back with us. Good to see you, Marie.
Thank you.
A regular here at these kind of shows. Marie, of course, is from Ellis Property Services. We have Reece Mennie as well with us. Good to see you, Reece, from HJ Collection. Scott Marshall graces our presence. Good to see you, Scott, from Roma Finance. And Peter Littlewood, many of you will know Peter from iHowz. Good to see you as well, Peter. And we thought we'd just start with a bit of an overview from our panelists as to what their predictions, projections and thoughts are for the year ahead. So do you want to get us started, Peter?
Well,
2020, it's going to be a crucial year. There's a lot likely to happen in 2024, different government maybe. It could go into 2025, that, but who knows? Give us an overview of what you think the year ahead is looking like.
I think it's fair to say it's going to be a year of uncertainty, but with absolutely everything. And the markets especially don't like uncertainty. So the most important thing that we're basically saying to people is you need to keep a level head, because remember, everyone's getting very upset about interest rates, etc. Well, you're only actually back to the norm that we had 10 years or so ago. I mean, I come from an era when I can remember 15%, and people weren't throwing themselves off bridges. So just keep ahead of what you're supposed to be doing. Keep on top of rules and regulations and laws, etc. Be aware of what you're doing and be professional.
But that doesn't mean to say that for many people whose business model wasn't based on those old, the old norm as it was then.
Yeah.
There will be many people who are caught in that bubble that have never experienced or run a business in that way, in that world.
No, I quite agree with you. And obviously, you know, they should not have overstretched themselves at the time. I mean, I know a lot of people who were borrowing sort of like 130% and they've got away with it. Yep. But it is a risk, and you have to be prepared. If you're taking a big risk like that, you have to be prepared to put up with the consequences. So it's up to you whether you want to go slow and steady or take the risk. But basically what we're saying is just try and keep a level head, because next year is going to be rocky. We're going to have the start of a general election, because you say at the worst it's going to be January 2025. So it's going to start next year, whatever happens. And there's going to be a lot of mudslinging going on, quite honestly.
Reece, what are your thoughts on the year ahead?
I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity in the marketplace. Where there's uncertainty, you know, comes opportunity, but you do need to keep a level head, and you do need to make sure that, you know what you're looking for in the marketplace. And as you just said, you know, you need to make sure that you're up to speed with what you're getting involved with, and make sure that you've done your due diligence and you're in the right place. There's going to be a lot of opportunity in terms of buying. You know, I think that there's a lot of good buys out there in the marketplace. If you're buying correctly, that's where you're going to make your money as a developer.
And do you think there's certainly a sense of things on hold at the moment, right? There's a lot of people waiting to see what happens, put it that way. Let's see what it looks like in January. Let's see what it looks like next July. Yeah, that seems to be a mantra at the moment.
Again, there's a lot of people that are doing that, a lot of people that are sitting on their hands. But honestly, from my point of view, I don't think that's the best thing to be doing right now, because there is fantastic opportunity out there to still make money in uncertain times. From me and people that have worked alongside me, are making money in these uncertain times, and you can continue to do so with the right information.
Yeah. Scott, what are your thoughts on the year ahead?
So, well, first of all, good morning, Ian.
Morning.
We are starting to see stress, albeit the early signs of stress coming into the mortgage market at the moment. So, residential mortgage arrears are up 1.8%. Buy-to-let mortgage arrears are up 4.5%. And these have been from historic lows when base rates, don't forget 2 years ago, it was only 0.1%. It's now 550% more than it was almost 2 years ago. And so what this is doing is it's reducing people's disposable income. When people's disposable income is being reduced, so their discretionary spending reduces, okay? And we're starting to see that unemployment is starting to tick up. So next year, I think we're going to see more stress because base rates are not going to come down anytime soon. And we're already starting to see that in the hospitality and leisure sector, businesses are starting to close down. And if this trend continues, then unemployment will start to increase even further, and we'll see more stress within the residential mortgage markets, within the buy-to-let space, tenant arrears, mortgage arrears, etc. So carrying on from what Peter has said and what Reece has said, next year we're going to see a lot of uncertainty, a lot of volatility, but volatility leads to opportunity, and therefore the buying opportunities that exist today are going to be as good, if not better, than the buying opportunities that are going to come to fruition during 2024. Yeah. So if I was a landlord sat on cash now, I would be thinking about opportunities to acquire property. And a developer at the same thing.
Now is a good time.
Now is a great time. And the other thing to think about is that the major house builders are all pulling back. Okay, so there's an increase in availability of contractors from sites, which means that the day rates for those contractors are going down because you can negotiate harder. Building materials, you can negotiate harder. So you can, not only can you buy better, you can build better as well. And developing or being a landlord is like any other business. You're playing a margin game. And if your GDVs are coming off a little bit, which they are going to, you're going to continue coming off. The reality is if you're buying better, you're building better, or renovating better, refurbing better, then you're still maintaining your margin in a falling market. And not only that, but because there are less people doing stuff at the moment, people are sitting on their hands, like other people have said, they're sitting on their hands, actually, you can be more aggressive in your buying strategies than you could have been 6 months ago. And once things start to open up a little bit, okay, and the market becomes more competitive from an acquisition strategy perspective, all of a sudden there's going to be more competition, which will force prices up.
I mean, there is a school of thought that interest rates might come down a bit. I mean, domestically, that seems to be the move. It's nothing dramatic, but we're seeing banks, perhaps soften a little.
Yeah, so the swap
you don't
curves,
sense that'll happen in this sector.
So swap curves are incredibly volatile at the moment. And one of the there's a number of reasons why they're so volatile. One of the reasons is that oil prices have jumped 27% since July of this year. So the inflation that's coming out of the system at the moment is probably likely to go back into the system, but it takes 6, 9, 12 months for it to filter through when there's a rising raw material cost. And so, again, going back to it, now is the window where there's an increasing amount of labour availability, an increasing amount of materials availability, a shortage of buyers, and so now there's a window of opportunity to trade.
Marie, you've been in this industry a long time. You wear a couple of different hats in this world.
Yeah.
So you know your way around it backwards, as it were. What are you looking at for 2024? Is it optimistic? Is it pessimistic?
I think, just recapping on some of the things that my fellow panelists have said, I think that starting with Peter, the market was very different 10 years ago. We didn't have Section 24, and we surely didn't have this cost of living increase. I think for 2024, what we're going to see is pretty much the same. there are landlords that come to me that are in really dire situations. And by that I mean that they're topping up the rent that they're receiving from other income. And we've got different landlords here. We've got landlords that are sitting on money from inheritance, and you've got, or other things, and you've got landlords that are the complete antithesis. And we have to remember that. So I think that we're going to see pretty much of the same. I am praying, as a landlord myself, that interest rates do not go up tomorrow, because I think they are as high as they really need to be in this market. But I do believe that landlords need to be able to get a grip, not so much in terms of your properties, because you can control that. You can control if there's a roof leaking. You need to control the biggest threat to your property, and that is the tenants, because that commodity is unpredictable. And so if you don't know how to work with tenants, how to deal with them in certain situations, that is what could take you out of the market if you don't plan to get out of the market. So that's what you need to be really careful of. They are your biggest threat.
And in terms of, obviously, this business about a general election next year, which it's likely to be, Peter, how significant is that? I mean, Section 21, there is a view that if a Labour government come in, they could be more ferocious on some of the areas around landlord and letting legislation. What's your take on that?
Well, we're talking to a lot of MPs, and a lot of Conservative MPs are unhappy with the Renters Reform Bill as it stands at the moment. Personally, we find it's balanced. There's some fairly good bits in there, and there's some really bad bits in there. So we're concentrating on what we consider to be the bad bits. But a lot of MPs are saying, look, the trouble is if the Renters Reform Bill does not go through, then Labour could bring in one that's even worse. Yeah. And we don't know. But the point we're trying to make to all MPs is if you frighten landlords away, where are you going to house tenants? Because the ultimate losers in all of this are tenants, because the landlords are there to earn a living. And if they can't earn their living by letting property, then they'll do something else. Could be they're developing property or whatever, but they're not developing to put tenants in. They're developing to sell, which is a slightly different world. So just be careful. Make sure you do talk to MPs and local councillors as well. Nobody knows. The good thing is that Labour appear to have ruled out rent caps on the basis it hasn't worked in Scotland. Yeah. It's not worked when we've had it here before in the 70s. It just leads to a shortage of money. So, I've seen some properties which are regulated rent properties, and they're in a dreadful condition because the landlord's got no money to put back into the property. Again, it's the tenant loses out on this. Yeah. So, be careful what you wish for.
And there's the crazy thing about all of this, Reece, is, and I think everybody in this room will recognise that stereotypical definition of the landlord, the Rigsby character who's trousering the money, living in a hammock in Barbados while enjoying the fruits of their labour, if there is any labour involved. In fact, there's no labour involved at all. They're just taking the money. The place is falling apart. And that is still, even some politicians that I interview and talk to, you mentioned just the word landlord. It's almost it's like the word pirate has suddenly come into the equation. There's no other industry or group anywhere on planet Earth where you would get away with stereotyping in that kind of way.
Yeah. And it's not the case all the time, but certain times it is the case. There is a lot of properties where landlords haven't pumped money back into the property on the good days, and now interest rates have gone up. People are feeling the effects of it. I'm a landlord myself, but I stress we need new homes in the country. Whatever government comes in, we need new homes. We need landlords. People need places to live. As long as you're buying correctly in these uncertain times, there is money to be made as a landlord or a developer and working in the right areas. I keep my business very, very simple. It's about buying right and making sure your portfolio is correct, and always looking at your numbers and making sure that everything you're doing, you're in front of. You can't be reactive and sit back and wait for things to happen. We all know the situation we're in. The year ahead's going to be the same again, as everybody on the panel said. It's about making sure that, you're in control of your own destiny and not letting other people be in control of you.
Yeah. And Scott, in terms of that change of, that potential change of government and what it might do, I mean, most landlords, as we know, do not own 50 properties. They might own 1 or 2, maybe 3. Most landlords are legit. Most landlords behave by the rule book. Always worth pointing out, there are already rules in place and have been for years surrounding what a property needs to look like and how you run your business, etc. But that doesn't mean to say that some people don't have a different view of that, and the new government could potentially just pile on more legislation at a time when it's the last thing in the world this industry needs.
I think that a landlord has an obligation to provide a safe, secure living environment for the people that are occupying their property. That's a given, whichever government is in power. And I don't think anybody on this panel would disagree with that. But I think that what is very likely to happen if there is a change of government in 12 or 15 months' time is that we're going to see a housing revolution back to something similar to what was the old South Council estate, material increase in social housing, repurposing, regeneration of town centres, city centres, creating a 15-minute city, a war on the car, and I can go into lots of detail around what these sort of radical thoughts are going to be. But ultimately, what it will do is, over this course of 3, 4, 5 years, it will materially increase the supply of social housing, of council style housing, and naturally, through an increased supply, there will be falling demand, for the private rented sector. And I think that that's probably the biggest threat to landlords at the moment, that if there is a change of government, there's a material increase in social housing and new style council estate, then demand falls, and therefore doesn't need to be rent controls. Normal market forces will dictate that landlords have to be more realistic, if that's the right word, more realistic in terms of the rents that they're charging, and also more proactive in terms of what they're doing with their properties to make those properties attractive for families and people generally to go and live in.
It's interesting that I think Labour talked about 300,000 homes a year, which interestingly, and this didn't get a lot of headlines, I think is already the target for the government.
And we're creating about 90,000.
Yeah, indeed.
So
and they've fallen well short of it.
Whoever comes in, it's the same scenario. We need new homes. I understand what Scott's saying, but in a 2, 3, 4 year period, is any government going to get us to where we need to be? Yeah. Probably not. We need to rely on developers and landlords to keep producing these homes for people that we need.
But that's what's likely to happen. So that's what's likely to happen. So one of the things that I think that Labour are doing at the moment is that they are dipping their toe in the water to see what the reaction of the public is likely to be. For example, to ripping up or changing or amending what green belts look like. And the reason why they're doing that is as a sense that generally around towns and cities, more expensive houses tend to be around the green belts, because they want the views of the open countryside, etc., etc. Well, once you change the nature of the green belt, that's likely to be where the social housing and new council estates are going to be. That also will mean that the value of nice, good quality housing or expensive housing is likely to flatten or come down. So you've got a levelling up of society. And I think that that's what is likely to happen with a change of government. And we all just need to be thinking 5 years down the road as to what does your property portfolio look like? What does your rent look like? What do your tenants look like, given there's going to be competition from a sector which currently isn't there?
So the social housing element will be
I
that
think
competition.
that'll be massive. And the other thing that will do, at the moment you've seen the major house builders pulling back, but once the the next government, if it's going to be a Labour government, launches its social housing council estate type initiatives, all of a sudden there's going to be more work for contractors, going to be more demand for building materials, and so you're going to see a natural inflation, which makes it harder for people to go for the smaller house builder to go and do business, a smaller landlord to go and do business. So that's why, going back to the first question, for what there is for next year, now is a fantastic opportunity to trade.
Okay, I'll come to Marie in just a second. I know, Peter, you wanted to just get a word in on that point.
Yeah, I just want to mention that a couple of things. It's interesting, this 300,000, because even the number that Labour have put forward equates to 300,000 a year. We've not met that since for 40 years. But I just want to say that whatever happens in the next 12, 15 months, we're going to get yet another housing minister. Bound to. We're getting another Conservative government or a Labour government or a coalition. We're going to get a new housing minister. A new person likes to make their mark by bringing in new laws, even though they're not needed. So that's all I would say. So be aware of new laws coming out.
And Marie, there is a kind of crunching irony here, isn't there? Back to the stereotype of the landlord, and certain politicians of certain political persuasions may be more hell-bent on believing that stereotype. We've got to properly hammer down on these characters. Who do they think they are, etc. But of course, the raw reality is, if you took every private landlord out of the system, that would be a housing crisis. It is this sector that is propping it up at the moment.
I mean, the media often talk about rogue landlords, greedy landlords. Let's take the rogue landlords. With the amount of legislation that we've had since the Housing Act 2004, I don't know where they could hide. Because whether it's going to be this government or a different government, they bring in new legislation which already exists. So under things like the Deregulation Act 2015, you couldn't do retaliation evictions. So when they're bringing in the Renters Reform Bill, it already exists in the statute. And we have to understand that there is a real distinct difference between the two sectors, social, private. It's going to take a long time before any government can build the amount of houses that they need to build where they don't need private landlords. And that is years down the line, because the money is just simply not there. And until a government has the balls enough to think about building on greenbelt land, it's not really going to happen. But I just feel that the narrative that is in the press about greedy landlords is nothing but a myth. And especially when I'm looking, that I have clients that are in lots of different continents, Africa, America, Europe, and, they all have got different size portfolios, but they have got different problems, but they're not sitting on a wad of money.
Correct. And you say, it's a myth, and that's correct. But that would be fine if, the odd person believed the myth. But we have some politicians that believe the myth. I spoke to I won't name any names, but I spoke to an MP not that long ago who said that landlords should not just be allowed to knock on the door and kick a tenant out. And I said, they can't.
They can't, absolutely.
And he said, well, no, but they can. And I said, no, literally, they cannot. Now, this is somebody... Legally. Correct, not legally, of course. This is somebody who's hoping to be in government. Who believes this. So that's kind of what the industry is up against.
I mean, when you think about private rented sector, our model is to keep tenants in a property. Landlords give notice if basically a tenant is not paying the rent. And why shouldn't we be able to have that ability? Because the courts don't help. The system is totally clogged up. So using the Section 21, in my experience of using Section 21, barring these last 9 months, I would say that I have probably not done more than 10 in my lifetime.
Wow.
I've been 30 years almost as a landlord, and then running the agency for 20 years. I have not done 10. Take away the last 9 months, because I'm saying to my landlord clients, we need to get hot on the paperwork. We need to be able to make sure that there's a distinct difference between tenants who genuinely are in financial hardship and those tenants who are shafters. Buy-to-let is a business, so why should we not be able to make a profit? I don't understand why that is such a dirty word or something that we shouldn't be able to mention in 2023. That is why we all do it. I'm not a social housing provider. So they're my comments.
No, fair point. And the point on Greenbelt, which has already been raised, I mean, Scott, is that going to be key to the next couple of years? What happens in that respect?
I think if there is a change of government, I think it's likely to be a hugely popular move, because those people that generally live on the edges of Greenbelt are Conservative voters. Those people that are wanting to have jobs near urban areas tend to be Labour voters. They need the housing near where the jobs are, and they've been forced out because they can't afford to buy or rent in in urban areas. So I think it's likely to be a big vote winner to create affordable housing on the edges of town and city centres where the Greenbelt currently is, from a Labour perspective.
Yeah, but I mean, it is very long term, though, of course, isn't it? This isn't going to happen in the next 12 months.
No,
this is a 4 or 5 year plan.
But every person who's in business has got to have a 4 or 5 year timeline.
Of course.
Can I just mention?
I think that you said sorry to jump in.
No.
Say 4 or 5 years. I think the government's going to tell you that's what's going to happen. How many times have we heard it?
Yeah.
Is it actually going to happen? There's such a deficit in what's needed. They will tell you that that's what's going to happen, but I can't see that over 5 years.
Yeah.
In all honesty.
There are many other factors that have got to fall into place
Correct.
for that to suddenly magically happen.
It does need to happen. Scott's right. That is what the country needs, but it's not going to happen anytime soon, in my opinion.
Peter,
well, you get two problems. Of course, you get everyone wants to live in the southeast of England, so it's tilting over. And secondly, you get NIMBYism. Your local authorities just put out a 5-year plan where they're suggesting they're going to build on the green belt and they're going to have a whole new village.
Yeah.
And suddenly everyone's gone, oh, no, we can't have that. Yes, we need them, but not there, please, over there.
Yeah.
So, NIMBYism is a real problem, which you can understand, can't you?
Do you think, Marie, that is going to be a crucial part, though, isn't it, of the planning ahead, whether it remains a Conservative government, and all the polls suggest that is not likely, whether it's a Labour government or a coalition, whatever it happens to be, but that the green belt issue will be front and centre?
I think, any government that gets in has got to look at that. We're a small island, we have got a housing crisis on, but don't bash the private landlords is what I'm saying. We're not the problem. The problem are the politicians. Yeah, it's them that have not built enough social housing. That is not a private landlord's responsibility.
No, we're not social landlords. We're not trained to be social landlords. Why should we be? That's down to the government and local authority to do that. Then not have a go at us for housing them.
They could also look at laxing the planning across different places. It would allow us to be able to produce more homes a lot quicker. When I say us, I mean small to medium-sized developers.
Yeah.
The planning is a joke at the moment across the country.
Yeah.
You could be looking at an application 12 to 18 months. If I was in government, that's what I'd be looking to do. Relax some planning application rules and regulations, and allow things to be converted and let developers move forward. There's plenty of opportunities. As I said, we specialise in converting office to resi. There's loads of stock out there which can bring, but again, that does get exploited by certain developers that don't do their job properly. So it's a catch-22 across the board. But if everybody was on the same page, there's certainly a way that this industry can continue to push forward and thrive and not be frowned upon.
And what's your view on converting shops? Because I know you can't do it at the moment. Because, if you've got this shop, potentially house, does it not break up the high street?
It does break up the high street, and that's why they haven't allowed it to be done yet. But there is certain high streets that are broken up already, and there's no going back for them.
Yeah.
So if that was to be produced into new homes or not new apartments or social apartments, it would benefit the town more than shops coming back in some instances in second and third tier cities across the country. So that is another angle that can be done, but it would need to be looked at on case by case, because there's certain places that you wouldn't want to see that in the high street, but in other instances, you wouldn't mind seeing it in the high streets.
Scott?
Yeah, no, so we've seen an awful lot of the high street retailers shutting down. We're seeing restaurants shutting down, and what that is resulting in is effectively what's known at the moment as the death of the high street. And so forward-looking, local authorities and councils are spending money to regenerate those town centres, to bring people back in to town centres, and the conversion of those empty, derelict commercial retail office space into residential is what is needed in order for to bring footfall back into those town centres, so that the coffee shops, the restaurants, the leisure facilities can in the future once again thrive. And we are starting to see local authorities, particularly in outside London, in the northwest, which obviously I know very well, spending money regenerating small town centres and pioneering. Forward-thinking landlords are following the money and following where local authorities are spending their money to go and convert those empty properties into residential, and they are the ones that are going to make the most money, because once the local authorities have spent it and regenerated, people come in, then prices are going to start going back up again. So talking about buying opportunities, there's a great opportunity there. And the other thing that I mentioned earlier, which is the 15-minute city, the forward-thinking local authorities are trying to create everything within a 15-minute walk of where people live. So schools, hospitals, doctors, dentists, pharmacies, supermarkets, so that we can live in a more greener, sustainable society at the same time as regenerating town centres. And I think that if there is a change in government, we'll see even more of this, because that's where the local authorities are going to get their income from. They're not earning it through rates at the moment because the properties are empty.
I mean, on that point, the 15-minute city thing, some people look at this as a bit of a conspiratorial thing. I mean, the idea that you could have a hospital, schools, doctors' surgeries, library, all these, plus green and pleasant land all around you. You're lucky to get it with 2 hours and 15 minutes in many places around the UK. I mean, that's a hugely ambitious target to try.
But there has to be radical thinking in order to bring people back into town and city centres.
Marie, do you think, everything we're talking about here ultimately will come down to our political masters, whether it's about interest rates? I know they say that they're not, fully in charge of that specifically, but they set all the mood music around it, of course, whether it's about Greenbelt, whatever it happens to be. Do you think, and this will sound like an incredibly unfair libel on our politicians, but is it just possible that some of these characters down there in Westminster have not got a clue what they're talking about when it comes to property, this market, landlords, investment, the future, building, and the whole gamut when it comes to this? Are they just out of their depth?
I think when it comes to the private rented sector and landlords, they are definitely a little bit out of touch. A lot of the laws that they have made in recent times have had a dreadful effect on tenants. Take the introduction of the tenant fee ban in 2019. So as an agent, you couldn't charge an admin fee to tenants and various other things, and that applies to landlords who are self-managing as well. What the consequence of that was that some agents, they passed the fees on to the landlords, and then landlords pass them on to tenants with higher rents. And this is how it goes. And it does take somebody, whoever our next housing minister is going to be, to actually really think out the box. You're always going to do things that are going to upset some people.
Of course.
But bashing landlords anymore on the head is really not the answer. A lot of people have had enough, and they do want to leave. But I think there are some people are leaving because information is not clear. And I think also as an industry, we have a tendency that we can overtalk a lot of things. We cannot control what we cannot control. And I think, something like the Renters Reform Bill, let us wait and see, because we've survived all some other legislation. We will survive this.
Sure. Peter, you wanted to come back in on that?
Well, only to say that actually I go one step further. For those of you who can remember Yes Minister, am I showing my age? Probably.
Possibly.
That is the situation that the ministers, they change on a frequent basis, which is just not a situation you should have, but they're advised by civil servants. We've been talking to civil servants. So many of them don't really understand what they're talking about. And it seems to be that they are in a particular area and then they get promoted and then move to, I don't know, transport or something else.
Yeah.
So they don't get a chance to retain this. I've only known one civil servant who refused to be moved because he had a good grasp on housing. That was 20 years ago. He was involved in the 2004 Act, and he just would not be moved because he had a good grasp on what he's talking about. Yeah. So, it's all down to grow expertise within that area and retain it.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? You need continuity, you need consistency. Yeah. And if somebody is at the helm of an industry that is such a crucial cog, I mean, absolutely pivotal to everything, the knock-on effects of property and the property investment business and all that goes with it. You absolutely need that person, whether they're left wing, right wing, somewhere in between. It's got to be somebody who at least remains in place for more than 5 minutes and understands it.
Because I mean, the trouble with politicians is they're always looking at the next election. So they're elected, they've got, in theory, 5 years. They only tend to do something that's controversial in the first 18 months. Then after that, they're getting ready for the next election. Yeah. So, again, come the next election, we are going to get a lot of change, I guess. Who knows? They don't know. But there's going to be a lot of change. Indeed. And probably 90% is unnecessary change.
We'll come back to some of those more specific points. We want to take some questions as well from the floor. There's a lot of people in this room. I would imagine a large chunk, 90-odd% of landlords or invest in some kind of way. We have a roving microphone. I think we're at the back, I think, with the microphone to begin with. Oh, we're here. Sorry. Literally right next to me. I clearly can't see. Should we start over there? There's a gentleman with his hand up there. I just can't see.
Good morning. Central London and West London and Northwest London. You're talking about green belt. There is no green belt in Central London unless they're going to build on Regent's Park. So we don't have to worry about Central London. No. How do you see the housing and rents going in West London and Northwest London, which is where we've got properties?
Okay.
And would you see a difference between commercial and residential? Because we have both.
Okay, so I'm purely talking from a residential viewpoint. And this is a word of caution to all landlords. And I'm going to say two things, because we're probably going to cover sort of best tips, but I'm going to mention this point now. For those landlords who have tenants that they have not put the rent up for many, many years, you've really got to think about doing that now. And I'm not going to go over it, but I have got a stand over there. Come and see me, because I'm going to tell you about a way to do that is a lot more smoother, and we're getting success on that. In terms of your question, the gentleman in the blue, rents will only have a ceiling. Tenants will only be able to pay up to a certain amount. So we have properties that we manage in central London, and this summer, they really were plateauing. There are other areas in southeast London. To give you an example, a one-bedroom flat, in the summer, it rented for £900. We rented it in September for £1,500 per calendar month. But then you have areas that are like Catford, where the rent are being reduced because, and without any disrespect to anybody in Catford, I've got units nearby in Catford, but generally speaking, the tenant will not be able to pay some of those rents that they are able to pay in other areas. And I think with London, we are seeing a difference. It's not all areas in London that are going up, but at the same time, anything that you are renting in this market is going really quickly. If I list a property on Monday, if you are a tenant, there's no point in calling me on Wednesday morning. It has already gone. You're wasting your time. But we have to be careful about that rent situation because it's not all markets.
And Scott, it's a good point on Greenbelt, as the gentleman said. You know, whether you're in North London, whether you're in North Manchester, wherever you happen to be, I mean, that argument is kind of redundant around that.
Completely true. You're never going to build housing in Regent's Park or Hyde Park.
Yeah.
You know, so, yeah, fair enough.
Mind you could get a few on there, couldn't you, if you wanted to give it a go, I suppose.
One or two.
Let's take another question. We've got a hand up down the front here. Gentleman on the second row.
Very much. We have residential properties as landlords in London. The question is, everybody here is really converted with all the sentiments that you were sharing with us earlier. You know, things are hard for the landlords. It's difficult. People think we're loaded with funds. We're not. Shortage of housing. Yeah, all that is there. But really, the impact of all this has got to be done in a more effective manner with the authorities who are bringing in new legislation. Some of you say they don't understand what they're talking about. Fair enough, I agree with that. But then, what is it that we're going to do about it? What is it? Where is the pressure on the politicians to actually understand the problems that landlords are having? Where are you as senior people in this industry doing something?
Can I answer that? Can I just have a show of hands in the room? How many people belong to a landlord association?
Well done.
Okay, I would say that's probably about half.
Yeah, maybe
Okay,
just over.
so for the other half who are not, make sure that you're a member with the landlord association. These people lobby on our behalf. And that's what you pay your tax deductible membership for. It's £80. We as individual people, no matter our profiles, are not going to make as massive impact than if we joined landlord associations. And it's not just because Peter's here on the panel. I'm a member of, both of the main ones. But I definitely would think about joining iHowz because it's madness if you're a landlord and you're not. As an agent, I'm a member of Property Mark and various other things. TPO, I have to be, even though I was before it became law. Join, let them lobby, fill out their surveys that they send you. You can't have it both ways and complain and say, oh, well, where is it for us? It's there. You've got to join it, but fill out the surveys because they act in our behalf.
And you do meet with politicians.
Yes.
You speak to these people regularly, Peter.
Yes. I mean,
a lone voice, as the gentleman there suggests, is, worthy as it might be, credible as it might be, it doesn't have the same impact as a bigger association.
Okay, I would say two things. Yes, we do talk to MPs and Lords. As an example, we're holding a briefing in the House of Commons on November the 22nd with MPs and Lords, where we're talking specifically about the Section 21, and we've got some suggestions how they can retain the Section 21, which will work for everybody. But one of the things I would say to the gentleman over there is, you are very important people. Why? Because you are voters, and you have the ability to write to your MPs. Write to your MPs, because if the MP gets something, not just a generic, oh, I'm complaining because I don't agree with this. If you've got a specific point, write to your MP about that specific point and how it's going to affect your business and how you might have to change your model, which may end up with more tenants being evicted or less tenants being offered, which is and the ultimate loser being the tenants. So do write to your MPs. They do read them. And one of the reasons we don't put a generic template on our website is they don't read it when it's just that generic template. It's going to be your words, your views, and how it's affecting your business. So, join. Thank you, Marie. do join a landlord association. Much prefer if it's ours, but it belongs to somebody. And, write to the MPs as well.
Okay. Another question. Any more hands up? Who'd like to put a question or a point to a panel? Lady right down the front on the second row.
Good morning.
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 I'm very happy to be here.
Pretty
We're
close.
slightly struggling to hear you.
Oh,
If you could-
I'm
there you
very
go.
happy to be here. I like to ask about Section 21. Most of the tenants, they want Section 21 to get social housing. And then they actually ask you to give Section 21 notice. That's one point. Another point is that the council, they said, sit, don't move until you are being evicted. And this really causes a lot of problem for the landlord and for the tenant as well. And most of them are not paying the rent properly, underpaid. So, they really have to do something about Section 21 and council stop tend to sit until they get.
So a wholesale reform of Section 21.
That's right.
essentially.
yes.
Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Reece, did you want to come in on that to start with, or Peter?
Well,
bag, really.
Yes, I mean, we are calling for retention of Section 21 because where the Section 21 is useful is controlling antisocial behaviour. We've got an MP who's also a landlord who's really pushing this in the House, and his attitude is, I'm unhappy with losing control of running my business because I'm now having to put it in the hands of courts. The fact that the courts are overworked as well doesn't help, but even if they're all right bang up to date, I want to be able to run my own business, not rely on courts. So we're bringing forward recommendations how to keep the Section 21. You've got the Section 8. If you've got rent arrears and the like, our strong recommendation is use Section 8. But where Section 8 really doesn't work is antisocial behaviour. That's where the problem is. And we're already being told of several people who may have offered to, how can I put this politely, tenants who might not have been offered in the past, they're willing to take them on because they've got the safety net of the Section 21. We've got several landlords now saying, by losing the Section 21, we're now not going to be offering to that kind of person. They're going to be on the street. And local authority can't do anything about it. They're spending billions a year on bed and breakfast. If they spent that money on building social housing, that would be better use of it.
Reece,
I think I've answered the question.
Local authorities do, and we know why, drag their feet on all of this, right?
Correct. And I'm a believer in most of these legislations that come out for a reason, and that's, for fees to go into the local authorities. Anyway, I mean, look, we can sit here and talk about all of these different legislations. As I said, I'm a developer. I'm a small landlord as well, but mainly, you've got to look at it as a business.
Yeah.
It's an uncertain time right now. Everyone wants to know how they can keep their head above water with the interest rates going up. Their mortgage prices have gone up every month. Now's the time to look at rent reviews in the correct way. Now's the time to speak to your tenants and get to know your tenants better and find out, as a few people on the panel have said, are they actually in hardship or are they just trying their luck? Sure. Get to know them. If you can do a rent review and you can put your rents up, that's what needs to be done. You need to run it as a business. There's businesses out there now that are still making money in uncertain times. You guys can still make money in uncertain times. But you have to take responsibility for it. You need to look at it as a business, a commercial decision, talk to your tenants and move forward.
But I do think, I do think that if you've got a tenant in a property that's been there a long time, and it's always been paying their rent, it's very difficult as a landlord with a conscience to just increase the rent.
It is.
For no reason.
For no reason, but it is.
It's very difficult.
It is, but it's not for no reason.
Yeah,
The reason right now is because you're
trying
in
to
it
cover
to
your
make,
mortgage.
you're in it to make money, and your mortgage has gone up, right? So there is a reason to sit and have a conversation about it. So that's that's my advice. I do understand that you might say that it is tough, and of course it is. If you've had a tenant for a long time, I appreciate that, but it's how you're looking at it. You can't moan that you're not making enough money, but not willing to do something that's going to put you in an uncomfortable position.
Indeed.
Business decisions sometimes are uncomfortable, and that comes with running a portfolio.
But I'd be interested to know from Marie, because we've had questions on our helpline where a landlord's been very nice and kept their rents low, then for other reasons they want to sell or whatever the reason, they need to get the property back. They give us Section 21, tenant goes, yes, I understand that. Suddenly, they can't afford anything else because they've been on a low rent. And this keeping a low rent comes back and bites you. Have you found that?
Yeah. I mean, it's just what I said earlier. For those landlords who've got tenants that have been in your properties a long time, you do need to increase those rents, but you're not going to be able to increase them to market value. It's too much of a big hit at one time. And that's just really where it's at.
So do it gradually, but it's the time to do it right now. So look.
I definitely say the time is now. The time is before that renters reform bill gets in. You've got to look and see what units are performing, and if they're not, because look, in this industry, figures don't lie. People can gloss over so many other things, but you can't gloss over figures. They either work or they do not work. And you could have a unit that perhaps is producing low at the moment, and maybe it's just because those rents are a little bit low. You've got to look at what you can do with trying to increase that. So at least for those of you who are on variable rates like myself, it's going to be coming at a balance. We're not making money. We're probably just, keeping our heads above water. Things are just washing its face as such. But you have to think about those things. What's right for one landlord isn't right for another. So you take what resonates with you. You need to increase those rents. As I've said, this is a business. Buy-to-let is a business. What is a business? A business is solving a problem for a profit. The problem is, at the moment, we are in a housing crisis. You've got to solve it somehow. But it's got to work with you and your tenants. It's not going to be right for everyone, but you do need to look at that rent increase.
We've got about 5-6 minutes left. Another question. We might be able to get a couple in, actually. Gentleman right at the front, and then there's one just over there. We'll try and keep these responses brief because it'd be good to get an overview for the year ahead to finish with our panel. Sir.
Thank you. In this digital era where governments and giant tech companies are trying to collect as much data from all of us and control every aspect of our lives, two things that have been floated as possible ideas for the future with governments, whoever they're going to be. One is a national landlord database, and two is a blockchain kind of technology on every property registered on the land registry, where they have every single detail of the property, enforcement notices, planning applications, etc., mortgage lending. What are the panel's thoughts on all this? Are you excited? Are you terrified? Are you indifferent on these two ideas of yet more data mining? On one hand, the benefits they'll pump is that, there's such a disconnect between the planning department and the licensing department and the council tax department and every other department. So this will bond and unify everything. But on the other hand, it's yet another data grab, another power exchange of information and control.
But the idea that, property is an industry that isn't, in that respect, isn't talking to itself enough, that data link in all manner of bits of information could be rather useful. It's been talked about for years, of course, and hasn't really come to fruition in any meaningful way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not terrified. I'm concerned about what data may well be on a national landlord's database and who has access to it. I don't have a problem if a legitimate tenant, because they're thinking about letting a property via the agency or myself, and they want to see if I'm the legal owner, they can do that through land registry. I don't mind them having access details, but I think it does, and it can open up landlords to fraud. And so I'm concerned about how much information would be on there. But I'm not bothering myself at the moment because I don't know the detail in terms of what will be. But concerned is
so it's
is
how
where
it
I
works. What information is
am.
that?
It can't be a database where anyone can just go and pop in your name and up will come all your properties that you own. That is a definite no. That could not work. Couldn't work for me.
Why couldn't that work? Because many people would go, well, hang on, you could just check out, any business sites and find out what you owe.
It sets you all. Ian, how much do you have in your bank account?
Got it.
Do you understand where I'm coming from?
No, I do. But they will be the questions that are thrown up on this, right?
Who needs to know? Who needs to know that?
Yeah.
You need to know that I'm a good landlord, accredited landlord. I've done all the things that I have to do, but I don't think it's anybody's issue about how many properties that a landlord owns. What is it going to do for you? How is that information going to benefit anyone?
Okay. I think there was one more question just over in the middle there that we can try and get in. Gentleman with his hand up in the white, I believe. Am I in the right place? Maybe not. Apologies.
Yeah. I think it's kind of inevitable that rent capping is coming down the line in the next 18 months. Be very popular with younger voters. And just wondering what kind of sort of rent cap models that they've seen, and perhaps you can share with us. Yeah. I know that rent capping is across Europe at the moment in a number of countries, so be interested to hear your views.
It does. There are many people who are quite seduced by the idea of a rent cap. Sounds very kind, very friendly. What's not to like, particularly if you're 18 and looking for somewhere to live.
Well,
but we know, and I think you alluded to it at the beginning, Peter, that we now have precedent in this country where it's been, well, to say the least, tricky.
You effectively got rent capping anyway, because if you try and put your rents up above the market rent and the tenant goes to the tribunal, you can be ordered to lower it to the market rent. So the market is the rent cap, if you like. Enforced rent caps don't work. Michael Gove has quite publicly said several times he does not want to bring in rent caps, whether he's in a position to be able to bring that forward. Labour have said they don't want to bring forward rent caps. The Labour mayor has said he likes rent caps, but he's rather left-wing on that one. They just don't work, quite frankly.
Okay. We kind of come to a conclusion. We have an hour on this session, but it would be nice to get an overview on. We began with those loose projections and thoughts on 2024. What about positivity? It is an industry that I think many people in this room would acknowledge has been hammered. It's been pulled this way and that way. It's difficult to follow politically what's happening. There's the instability of a general election, which throws it all up in the air again. Reasons to be positive, Marie, for 2024 in the world of landlord investment.
Something positive. Well, when your neighbour is exiting, you can basically benefit from higher rents. Look, the rental market, and especially in London, is always going to be quite buoyant. People, even though there are a lot of tenants that are leaving London to go into areas that are cheaper at the moment, they probably start to level up with London rents. I think it's a good time. I have no plans in selling, and out of my portfolio that I manage, I would say less than 10% of my landlords are selling, despite some of them, they're just washing their face. They're holding on.
Scott, reasons to be cheerful.
Yeah, before I do, I just want to go back to the question for the guy in the yellow jumper around data. I think data is hugely important, and the more data that either landlords or lenders or people in the property industry have got access to, the better decisions they can go and make. So as a business right now, we are mining data, we're using data to make better lending decisions. And the more tech that can be introduced into the property sector, from our perspective, the better really, so that we can help more people do more things and have better businesses. Okay. So just want to make that point. So don't be scared of data, because actually ultimately it helps the consumer.
All right.
Now in terms of next year, I've already said that there is such a fantastic opportunity to buy now. Volatility creates opportunity. And where there is material volatility, there's material opportunity. Contractor rates are coming down, building materials prices are coming down, buy prices are coming down. There's less competition for buying property at the moment because people are scared to do stuff. So I actually am incredibly positive. And as a business right now, we're looking to expand, supporting more people, creating more wealth for themselves and their families.
Got it. Reece, why should we be upbeat for 2024?
The same again. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but there's great opportunity. You know, there's property prices that people would say are distressed prices that are not distressed properties that are going to become available. The market's buoyant for people that are renting. I can only see that getting more and more people getting involved with the rental market because of the, you know, mortgages are few and far to come between.
Sure.
So I think 2024 can be a great year for everyone.
So a lot of positivity here. And Peter, why should we be going into 2024 with a smile on our face?
Very simply, people need somewhere to live. You good people are supplying 20% of that at your own risk. You know, carry on doing it. Even if, I mean, remember the M25, they widened it to make it better for people, for traffic. It just brought on more traffic. Even if we get the extra 300,000 a year, which I don't think we will, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
We may get more people coming into the country. Just remember, you're supplying 20%. I saw a prediction the other day said in 10 years, that could be 40%. It's set to grow.
It's set to grow.
Stay with it.
On that positive note, we thank a little round of applause for our panel, if that's okay, everybody. Marie, Reece, Scott, and Peter. Thank you to everybody who attended. As you know, this is a huge exhibition here at Old Billingsgate. It's the best. There's stalls, information. You guys know all this already. So do make sure you walk around, chat to as many people as you can. There, I promise you, every bit of information you need in all manner of areas in this industry is out there today. And thank you for coming this morning. Have a great day.